Julian Bermudez. Welcome to Eric's Psychedelic Breakfast.
Hey Eric, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you so much for being here, man. It means a lot that you take some time out of your very important schedule and work that you're doing, man.
Yeah, thank you. I'm very happy to be here with you.
Yes, so one thing we always like to do in this show is just say kind of what we had for breakfast, just as a little icebreaker.
Sure, sure. I fast. I don't eat breakfast.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice. And that's cool. So what are you gonna eat next, or what's your
Yeah, well it's 1 in the afternoon now, so I've already had a light
mm,
lunch, which I had some baked chicken with my
oh,
with my lovely dog Layla. She loves that.
oh, nice. That's awesome. That's cool. Dude, I love your room. You have such a nice room back there.
Thank you. Thank you.
Is
Yeah, this is my therapy room.
I was about to ask that. That's so cool, man. I like is that an Alex Gray blanket?
It is, yeah. Good eye.
Nice, man. Um, One of my favorite psychedelic artists, of course.
Yeah, he's incredible. A
Yeah,
wonderful philosopher as well.
yes, that's so true, man. That's so true. I would love to talk to him sometime, that'd be so cool.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Cosm and Empthion is open, so you can
Oh
always,
yeah.
if that's available to you.
Yeah. Yeah, no. It's I live in Texas,
Hmm.
in Austin. And you are in Oregon, right?
Yeah, that's right. Portland.
Portland. Nice, man. It's beautiful over there.
Yeah, yeah. This is one of the most beautiful, prettiest areas I've seen in the States, that's for sure.
Nice. Nice. Yeah. Um Man, so I guess I'll just say a little bit about you. You are if people don't already know, you are a psychedelic therapist, right? Then you have your own kind of business and practice that you started
That's right. Yeah.
in your personal house. Man, that is so cool how you did that.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that. It's been a lot of work.
Right. Yeah. How did you get to that? How did you get to be able to do that? That's such an interesting career, such a awesome
Yeah.
career.
Yeah. Well, it started with trying to transform and heal my own pain and trying to figure out how I could live my life in a way that wasn't just based on my survival defense mechanisms that were always in place from childhood. So, the more and more that I focused on transforming my own pain and trying to figure out how I could enjoy life, and the more that it started working for me, the more I was able to work with other people. And coincidentally, that's when a lot of people started coming to see me.
Hmm. That's so sick, man. I love that idea of looking at your life as survival versus living because people say it all the time, but if you actually think about it, like survival so far in everybody's life has been guaranteed, you know?
Sure, sure. Yeah, yeah, we're here. So we've
Yeah.
made it this far, but that's not to say that it's easy, right?
Hmm.
When we're developing, especially as children, when our bodies are developing, when our nervous system is developing, when our neurological patterns are developing, our emotional circuits, our hormonal systems, all of these are developing in relationship to the environment. And so,
Hmm.
if it's a very stressful environment, if our needs are not met, or even worse, if it's a very abusive or dangerous environment, that's what our bodies grow up or develop in relationship to. So, we might be here, you and I, as adults later on in our lives, and we might still have survival defense mechanisms that are kicking in. We might not feel safe. We might feel threatened. We might feel like there's some sort of impending doom or some danger that's about to happen right now, even if it's not here. And
Hmm.
that's just how the pain from the past continues to show up in the present.
Right. Yeah. I love that concept of free will, essentially, right? Because when you think about a lot of the negative self-talk that we do to ourselves all the time, I think, you know, y when you look at the grand scheme of things, how where you were born and the circumstances in which you were put. when you trace them all the way back to one night where everything was just, a specific way for your parents to just, have sex one time or whatever, and then you were born, and all of these situations kind of are external, and you only have so much control over over what you choose. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Free will is absolutely apparent in our world, but there's so much that is not free will. For instance, most people don't make a choice to be harsh to themselves and critical and judging and evaluatory and punitive, like you were just mentioning, that inner self-talk, that relationship. Most of the times, that's not a choice. It's just a default pattern. When
Mm,
I'm sitting alone in my room with just me and my dog, and I suddenly have a wave of fear that comes over me, and I feel like something terrible is about to happen. And so then I immediately look to my phone to distract. That's not a choice. That's just a default pattern that's been
mm.
deeply entrenched inside of me. And there's so many circumstances in our external world that are out of our control. Where we do have control is how we respond to things that are happening. And if we can start to build awareness to those default unconscious or patterns that we're unaware of, if we can become aware of them and identify them, that's the foundation or the prerequisite to start exercising choice. And agency or choice or free will it's like a muscle, it's a capability, a capacity that we do have to develop and mature and exercise in order to be able to use it.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me a tiny little bit of kind of how wars work. How there's always that sense of revenge, right? Of like, okay, let's say somebody does the worst thing possible to someone else. Then having a negative reaction to that is like a positive reaction. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's what we do to ourselves. We're like, oh no, this is good. This is I need to keep beating myself up. And I feel like sometimes psychedelics can even add to that, add more ways in which you're failing to break through or change or destroy your ego.
Yeah, yeah. Psychedelics need to be used in a very respectful, intentional manner. They have specific properties to them. Like, for instance, one of the most common ones is they'll bring things to your awareness. And those things that usually come to your awareness are usually areas of your life that are causing you harm or pain or constriction. They're limiting you in some way. So if we're really harsh to ourselves, really judgmental to ourselves, and we're carrying pain around and we're not processing it or we're avoiding it, something that a psychedelic will do is bring that to your awareness. And if
Mm,
you're not prepared, if you're not able to navigate that space or to work with the pain that's coming up, if your pattern, for instance, is to avoid it, or to push it away or fight it or challenge it and struggle with it and try and exile it, well, then you have a very difficult time. And what ends up
right.
happening is we get in this pattern for that entire experience of just trying to fight the experience and trying to control it. This is what we would call, a bad trip. And another thing that the psychedelic is really good at doing is reinforcing new patterns. And you can do that very quickly. We'll call it neuroplasticity, neurogenesis. It's the ability to create something new very quickly. And so if
Hmm.
we spend that entire time resisting the experience, fighting it, pushing it away, not wanting to see what's coming up, that's the pattern that we're reinforcing. And that's also the pattern that unconsciously we're trying to change. We're trying to do something different. So, yeah, we can really beat ourselves up in these situations if we're not prepared for them. And a lot of the times it can be
Mm.
more harmful than it can be helpful in that situation.
Right. Yeah. When I was growing up, I always heard the classic 3-day rule. One day before for preparation, the day for the journey, and then one day after for the integration,
Sure.
at least.
Yeah.
Which makes
Yeah.
it really interesting to look at that into the modern healthcare system and how people, who are having immediate kind of like emergencies or who are having a bad day or something, maybe they haven't had that preparation day or something.
Mhm.
they go to a doctor or something looking for help, and then the doctor is not just going to be like, okay, let's give you 250 micrograms of LSD, and that'll make you feel better, you know?
Yeah, yeah. There's so many issues and problems and
Right.
barriers in the health is in the health sector of our society right now. You know,
Yeah.
almost all medicine right now is based on profit. It's all for profit. Whether it's the pharmaceuticals or the healthcare industries, the hospitals, all of it comes down to money. And when you're working in a for-profit industry, the bottom line is always profit. And ethics and healing
Mm,
and positive outcomes always take a back seat in terms of making profit. So we always try to maximize how much profit can be brought in. And so for doctors,
right.
for instance, they might see 20, 30, 40, 50 people in a single day, and they might only have 10, 15 minutes per person, maybe a half an hour if you're really lucky. And so they don't really have the capacity for the most part
Mm,
to sit down and talk with people and say, well, what's the pain that you're carrying around? Where did this pain first develop? What was your relationship with this pain? What do you do with your emotions? How do you process your emotions? How do you express them? What's your relationships like with other people in your life, your partner, your boss, your parents, so on
hmm
and so forth? They don't have the capacity, the time capacity, the energy capacity, or the skills or tools to really help people navigate these things. So the idea of plugging them up on a psychedelic is very, very far out of reach right now. And even if they could, which in a lot of hospitals they do use things like ketamine, for instance, they don't really know what they're doing. I worked in a hospital and I've seen
Yeah.
nurses or doctors just plug people up on ketamine drips and then just close the door and walk away. And it's like, whoa, did you guys ever read any of the studies from the 60s? Like, this stuff is very powerful and can have profound effects on people, and it needs to be handled in a highly intentional and respectful way. And right now, our healthcare system does not have that capacity.
Man, that's really interesting. That's really interesting to think about if we changed um because I'm trying to think like in the way that you do it. Because I think, psychedelics are not for everybody. There's people with mental health issues, maybe some type of schizophrenia or something. Some people, it doesn't affect them because of some maybe medicine that they're taking for hormonal reasons or something. Um, but it 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 feels like there is a way that we can, like maybe with technology, if we can modify psychedelics, tailors
Yeah.
it to each person.
Sure. Yeah, I'm very skeptical of bringing more technology into these spheres because
Yeah.
technology can be used for good things or bad things, relatively speaking, right? Right now, you and I are connecting through technology. You're in Austin, I'm in Portland. I don't know how many miles away from each other and hours apart, but we're able to have a conversation and we're able to take this conversation and share it to people who are interested in hearing these things. So I think that's a wonderful, good thing that can take place in terms of our experience.
hmm
And technology can be used for disconnection as well, which it really is. And a lot of the times, these technologies are developed with the leading neuroscientists and psychologists to help them develop it to make it as addictive as possible, to pull our attention away from the present moment, to get us sucked into social media and doom scrolling and all the doom and gloom and all the negative things that are happening. They have so many researchers that know how to manipulate our emotions and play off of our emotions and then offer us products to soothe those emotions temporarily. Entire sectors of the economy are based on this, like the beauty industry, for instance. they prey on the idea or the belief that you're not good enough, you're not worthy as you are, and if you buy this product, then you'll be good enough. And so many aspects of technology just really push this belief of you're
Mm.
unworthy, you're small, you're not good enough.
Yeah.
So I'm always very skeptical of bringing technology in. I think
Mm.
that we really need to get back to our roots and reconnect with who we are, reconnect with each other,
Mm.
absolutely reconnect with nature. And when we do those things, we can reconnect with what we do. So the things that we do, the things that we create actually represent who we are rather than another playing out of these trauma adaptations.
Mm.
If we can do that, then I think the things that we'll create will be much more genuine to a healing and a wholeness experience of who we actually are.
Yeah. Do you have any tips for, people who this is so funny. Um, who try to take a psychedelic and then they are instead of allowing the psychedelic to change them and change, their ego and have them worry about other people, it becomes something that's more like you become like the psychedelic person, you know what I'm saying? Like just another thing to add. So I guess my question that I kind of had, and this is kind of the integration, I guess, part of the journey would be, um, how would you talk about breaking away from certain negative patterns, naturally. How do you know that what you're experiencing is a it's not one of those patterns that you're not, repeating the pattern, but this time with a psychedelic or something?
Yeah, yeah. Spiritual bypass
Yes.
is a real potential a pitfall or downfall of the experience. So, my advice to people, if I were going to give myself advice when I was younger and I started working with them, when I first started working with psychedelics, I had reviewed all of the literature. I had read every piece that I could get my hands on, all the medical literature, all the studies, all the books. I had heard so many incredible people talk about it. And knowing the experience conceptually and having the ideas of how to navigate it versus actually doing it and experiencing it are totally different. And so for somebody like me who had spent about 7 years reviewing the literature before I had an actual experience with a psychedelic substance, it was very challenging.
Yeah.
So the advice that I would give is to seek some support, to find somebody who can help you go through this, and to be very, very cautious of who you work with. When I work with people, we don't do the 3 day thing is great, and we do use that, of course. And we also prepare for weeks leading up to it. So there's a minimum of 4 weeks leading up to this experience where we're
Mm.
doing deep therapy work. And the characteristics of the therapist are very important. I've had lots of therapists in my life that will just validate and reaffirm my patterns. They'll hear the stories that I'm telling where I'm in pain. I see myself as a victim. I see all these things that are happening to me, and they will validate that victimhood and they'll validate my negative self-talk and they'll keep it going. And I keep coming back, and we just go round and round. Every week it's the same thing, but nothing really changes. So, in these situations, what we really need is somebody who can help us take an inventory of all the pains that we carry and the way that we adapted to those pains. So we can start to begin to build that awareness and notice when we're in one of those negative patterns. The way to identify one of those negative patterns is they usually formed as an adaptation to pain at some part in our lives. So they provided short-term relief. They helped us in some way. They might have even saved us, but they provided also gave us long-term harm or long-term consequences. These can be very elusive and very difficult to find. It's like putting together a 10,000 piece puzzle, but you're looking at it 2, 3 inches above the puzzle. You really have to be able to step back and ideally have somebody there with you who can see it from a distance, and ideally somebody who's gone through it themselves. So The advice is take your time, go through the preparation. Don't jump right into the experience. Try to have the psychedelic experience, which is to deeply connect with yourself before you use a psychedelic substance.
Mm,
You can induce that exact experience in lots of ways through reflection, through inquiry, through meditation, through connection with nature, through sensory deprivation. There's so many ways to get to this exact same spot. Really try to build the capacity to get there beforehand. Try to build the capacity to sit with that pain that you have and build a relationship with it. Connect with yourself. See, what do you do with your emotions? Do you fight them? Do you suppress them? Do you try and push them away? Do you welcome them? Do you embrace them? Do you just let them come spilling out the seams, just bursting on everybody? What do you do with your emotions? And try to figure out ways to work with those emotions in healthy, constructive ways. Of course, look at the way that you treat yourself. What are the views of yourself and how do they show up in your life? These are all the things that we want to take the inventory of beforehand.
hmm
And by definition, just connecting with those is a psychedelic experience. And then if we can do that, if we can say, I have this deep pain that I feel, I always feel it, it's in my gut, it feels like a knot or a weight, and it comes all the way from my childhood, from this time where I was abandoned or I was judged or I was punished or my parents weren't available. Then what we can do is we can use the psychedelic experience as a tool to go into that pain and to try to comfort it intentionally. We say, I have this pain. I know what it looks like. I know how it shows up in my life. I know what the needs underneath it are, and I'm going to try and comfort it. I'm going to try and soothe it. I'm going to try and meet those needs myself in constructive or healthy ways. And that's how we go into the psychedelic experience, rather than just letting whatever it is that's in there just come up and maybe overwhelm us and
hmm
frighten us and try to, we might spend the time avoiding it. Let's go into it intentionally. So that's the way that we do it. And that's what I highly encourage other people to do as well.
What do you think about the idea of people kind of like um I kind of crossed questions here, a little too question here. People who kind of like take the idea that, once you take the psychedelic, you can, become enlightened or you become that change is fast instead of a a not that very different change, not a change that completely transforms your reality, but something that is grounded in your reality, something that you can work with.
Yeah. The magic pill.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a very common thought. A lot of people have that exact belief. And at one point, I held it too. And, this might not be a popular belief or viewpoint, but my view, with my experience of having psychedelic experiences and working with people who are also having it, is the psychedelic does not change you. It does not alter anything inside of you. It just provides you with the tools and the insights and the information that you need to change the dynamic yourself. You still have to go and do all the work. You still have to go and work with that pain. The psychedelic is just going to show you that pain and it's going to show you your
hmm
relationship with it. And it might even show you what it looks like if you can comfort and soothe it. You might actually feel the peace or the relief for a while, which can be really useful if you've never felt that before. So this spiritual bypass, this saying, I took this thing and now I'm enlightened, is very common and it's very dangerous. And this is how we get, these gurus or these enlightened people, these sages, these wonderful teachers who will run, meditation retreats or will run ayahuasca retreats and they'll abuse the people that come through there. It's because they have bypassed all of that pain, all of those
hmm
patterns in themselves. So we have to be very careful of this dynamic and we want to not just look at the psychedelic as this magic pill that's going to change us and fix us and make everything all rainbows and butterflies,
hmm
but to change that view and to see him, this is a tool It's something that it's a technology, if we will, that can help us see how we can make changes in our own lives. And if we use it
Mhm.
for that end, and then we develop a practice to make those changes, that's where we can really start to see the changes in our lives.
Right. Yeah, I think it was Alan Watts that said, once you get the message, you can hang up the phone, you know.
Sure.
Yeah, before I forget, what do you think about microdosing?
Microdosing is very powerful. It's very, very useful as well. Again, when done in the right context. I've seen a lot of people who want to use the microdosing as like a morning cup of coffee, where you just take it and it gives you the zest to get your day going and it makes you more productive and all the things. The way I like to use it is before we start to use it, we want to build a practice. And the practice can be something as simple as 5 minutes. I'm going to sit on this cushion where I'm at right now. No phones, no distractions. I'm going to close my eyes and I'm going to turn my attention into my body. And I'm going to pay very close attention to the tensions, the constrictions, the weights, the knots in my body. And there's very specific hot spots where they live, like the gut. You might have a knot or a weight in your gut. You might have a heat or a fluttering or a weight in your chest. There might be a dry, choky feeling in your throat, or your jaw might be clenching. Your muscles might be tight or constricted. What we want to do is we want to build the capacity to sit and pay very close attention to those feelings in our body. We want to do that at least for a couple minutes, ideally 5 minutes at a time. And we want to do it for 3 minutes or for 3 times a day minimum. So that's 15 minutes
Hmm.
at minimum out of the day. I spend way more time looking at silly videos on YouTube about protests and all this economic stuff and things that don't actually serve me.
Wow,
So
yeah.
so here I'm going to say, I'm going to make myself a priority. I'm going to make my healing a priority, and I'm going to put in some effort to connect with that and to develop and nurture the capacity to heal. Once I get that established, and it doesn't matter how long you do it for, it just matters that you do it. And if I can stretch out to doing it for 15 minutes each time, it's 45 minutes out of the day. Again, if we look at our phones at the end of the week, most of the times I'll tell us how often we spend on our phones, and some people spend hours every single day. So here we say, I'm going to make myself important for 45 minutes a day. If you can do that, then you add the microdose into this, and that gives you the ability to connect so much deeper with your internal state, with the things that are going on inside you emotionally, mentally, spiritually.
Mm.
And if you can really connect with that, that's where you can build the foundation to enact some choice, to make choices or to have agency or to take responsibility.
That's not based on a complete autopilot reaction based on fear,
Precisely, precisely.
but rather understanding and joy and happiness.
Yeah. See, when we suppress one emotion like fear or anger, we get the message that anger is bad, and if I express anger, I'm going to be a bad kid and I won't get loved and I'll lose my attachments, so I suppress my anger. We can't just suppress anger. We
Hmm.
can only suppress emotions. So we suppress all of our emotions and we become numb and we become disconnected. And that includes joy, gratitude, love. So
Mm.
if we want to connect with all of the positive, wonderful things in life, we also have to connect with the other emotions as well, which ironically are there for very positive, compassionate means. Anger is there for a reason. Fear is here for a reason. It's our
Hmm.
relationship that becomes very dysfunctional. So we really want to go in and start to build a relationship with these emotions, to build the understanding of why they're here, what purpose are they trying to serve, what's the teaching, what can I learn from this experience. When we do that, then we have the ability to start enacting choices in life.
Right. Yeah. I was just thinking how yesterday me and my roommate got into an argument about the definition of anger and
Mhm.
and just how much like vocabulary and just language just shapes the way we look at ourselves, you know?
Yeah.
It's so interesting that like what's anger, you know? Like is it
Yeah.
anger, you know?
Yeah. Well, anger is a human emotion. It's usually accompanied with a physical feeling, a physiological response in your body. When you get angry, your heartbeat might increase, your body temperature might increase, your
Hmm.
breathing might become, your breathing rate might escalate and it might become more shallow. In other words, it's getting you ready for some sort of conflict.
Hmm.
So when we look at times where we feel anger, for instance, if you're out walking on a trail in Austin and you come across a bobcat and the bobcat's walking with her cubs, chances are she's going to see you and she's going to get angry. The claws are going to come out and the teeth are going to come out, and she's going to try and push you away because she sees you as a threat. Anger is a response from our bodies that tell us there's a threat in the environment and I need to push that threat away. So it's a survival mechanism. It's there to
Hmm.
protect us. But if we have a relationship with our anger that is based on suppressing our anger or fighting our anger or trying to get our needs met in unconstructive ways, this is where it just comes bursting out the seams.
Exactly.
And we don't actually play out the fundamental needs of the anger. It becomes more conflict and confrontation,
Mm.
the need to be right, the need to be important, the need to be accepted. So, in other words, the threat is not being accepted, not being connected. So it might not have anything to do with your roommate or whoever we're having the argument with. It's usually a pain from the past where I wasn't connected, I wasn't accepted, I wasn't
Right.
valued or cherished. So it's this residual anger that still lives inside of us and comes out the seams. This is something we really need to work with.
Yes, and I love to catch it because it comes up so subtly. The
Just like that.
just like that.
Yep.
And and it's so strange. It's so interesting because it's not something you choose. You wouldn't automatically want to be angry at someone.
Right. Yes. Yeah, catching it is the first step. So anger is usually, for a lot of people, it flows so fast and so easily, and it's usually the first emotion. It's either anger or fear that usually come right away, and those two
Hmm.
are intimately intertwined. They're both associated with threats. They're threat assessments. Anger says there's a threat, somebody's pushing my boundaries, and I need to push the threat away. Fear says there's a threat, somebody's going to harm me, and I need to run away. So those two are deeply connected with a threat. What we want to be able to do is when the anger comes up, we don't want to get into a fight with whatever the threat is. What we want to do is recognize that anger's there and then say, what threat just presented itself to me? Is it
Hmm.
is it my anger or is it my roommate's perspective? Does he have a different perspective? Why would that challenge me? Why would that threaten me so much?
Yeah.
And then when we can get curious about it and we can say, why is this anger here right now? Is this the first time I felt this? Is this common? Where
Right.
does this come from in my life? Then we can choose to express whatever need is underneath it in more
Hmm.
constructive ways.
Right. And I feel like the anger also tends to go away after a while, after some time of uh of of just looking at it and recognizing it and being just more gentle with yourself, you
Yes.
it just kind of fades in the distance.
It serves its purpose.
Yes.
If we allow the anger to serve its purpose, to have a voice, which the voice of anger is saying, I have unmet needs and I need to meet those needs. If we can listen to that voice that's coming up trying to protect us, and we can say, okay, why are you here right now? What are the needs that you have? And then if we can be adults in the room and choose how we communicate those unmet needs, the anger served its purpose. And it can then resolve and soften. And that's usually what happens. On the other hand, if we don't do that and we suppress the anger, it's like chaining a monster up in the basement and throwing it scraps. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Right.
Or it's like putting a pressure cooker on the stove and just gradually turning the heat up. Eventually, it's going to pop. And when it pops and all the anger comes bursting out, a lot of the times it's like a snowball effect. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it comes out in these really inappropriate, unstructured ways. So you're absolutely right, Eric. The first step here is being very aware of the anger, noticing, I just got angry, and then getting
Yeah.
very curious about it. Why did I get angry? Not what's happening that's making me angry, but what is the thing that's happening? Why does that make me angry?
Yeah.
What is happening here that is actually angering me? What is
Right.
my belief about myself and the situation that is invoking the sense of anger? What are the unmet needs? And can I meet those needs in ways that are in line with who I am and what I'm actually trying to get?
Yeah, which most of the time tends to be a positive, loving thing.
Precisely. Yeah,
Yeah.
with yourself and with others.
Right.
Which is really interesting because when we get really angry with somebody else, what's the thing that ends up happening? We get disconnected, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It leads into a fight, into a conflict, and then we get the exact opposite of the thing that we were looking for. And then maybe
Right.
they blame us, and then we blame ourselves. Oh, I
Yeah.
was so stupid. I shouldn't have said
Yeah.
that. I ruined this connection. I lost this relationship.
Yeah.
And so it's so funny how the
It
way that
is.
we usually respond to anger gets the exact opposite thing that the anger is actually looking for, which is usually some form of connection, some form of safety, some form of understanding. And if that anger just bursts out the seams in inappropriate ways, we can't get those things.
Hmm. And it's so funny when you're like in the middle of a psychedelic trip and you're glowing and you feel like you know all the answers of the universe, and then a week later you're telling your friend about it in the past tense. Like like it's gone. It's it's something that happens, you know, all the time.
Yeah.
To everybody. It's, you know,
Hmm.
like I remember this quote from somebody, I forgot who said, maybe it was a Buddha or something, who was like, the more neurosis that you have, like the wiser that you'll be, like the better. Because maybe you have more stuff to work with or whatever. And has any of the like natural human desires kind of gone away? Have you noticed as you have worked with psychedelics and therapy and healing? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I get what you're saying. So, when we really start to connect with ourselves, which is the psychedelic experience, by definition, psyche, meaning all the immaterial aspects of who we are, our soul, our mind, our thinking, our emotions, our spirituality, and delic, emerging or manifesting, that's a deep connection to who you are. The more that you connect deeply to yourself, and the more that you start to build a practice of connecting deeply to yourself, when you start to see all the pain that you carry and the way that you adapt to that pain, then you can make choices on what's really important to you. For instance, if I carried around a lot of pain from my childhood, if, for instance, I was never good enough for my parents, I could never meet their expectations, I could never win their approval, maybe they weren't available emotionally, maybe I only got their attention if I made big accomplishments, or on the other hand, maybe they were abusive, and I learned that anger and making myself big and grandiose and attacking other people before they attack me is the way to survive and get attention. These are all trauma adaptations to the same thing of not getting the attention, not getting the connection, not being
Mm,
valued, not being respected. So then I build a lifestyle of getting my value, getting my respect, getting my attachments, getting my connections through ways that are based on that original trauma. I go out in the world and I become good enough. I go and I obtain all of the status, all of the positions of power, all the wealth, all of the ability to control people around me so that way I can be valuable, I can be respected, I can be important. I go and become a doctor because then people will need me. And I spend all of my time sacrificing myself to please and care for other people. These are not in line with who we are as individuals. So the more that we
right.
can see how we respond to our pain and the things that we do in our life, the livelihood that we create, the
Mm,
more that we can intentionally create our livelihood based on who we are. In Buddhist philosophy, there's the Four Noble Truths. The first one is
There is
suffering is an,
suffering.
there is suffering, it's inherent in life. There's no
Yeah.
avoiding this. The second one is that there is a cause to the suffering.
Right.
The third one, so if we can understand this cause, then we can stop that cause, which is the third one, well-being is possible. If we can take responsibility and cultivate our own lives and make choice and take responsibility, then there is an end to suffering. And the fourth one is, here's the path.
The Eightfold
There's
Path.
there's eight paths to it, and one of those is choosing the right livelihood. Of course, before that, you have to have the right mindfulness, meaning that you're aware and you're paying very close attention to what you're feeling and what you're doing right now. And if you're able to do that, then you can intentionally create the right livelihood. And this is how we can directly change our own lives.
Right. And I think about death, right? And what people usually think about during their death. And a lot of the time it's not that I should have gone to more protests or I should have scrolled more on TikTok or seen more, been more on social media or posted more TikToks, but it's usually like it's all about love. It's, that I love enough, that I experience enough love and all of that in my life.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. I've spent a lot of time with dying people.
oh, cool.
I worked in hospitals. I've worked in dementia care. I've worked on trauma units. Um, so I got to spend a lot of time with dying people, for better or for worse, a lot of people might say.
Yeah.
And so I've talked to a lot of people who were at the end of their lives, and there are very specific regrets that a lot of people have. In fact, there's a wonderful book called Top Regrets of Dying People. It's a nurse in palliative care who's talking to
Mm,
people who are constantly dying. And the most common things are that I spent too much time working. I spent too much time trying to manage the finances, trying to
mhm.
get the status and the wealth and
Right.
the
Yeah.
prestige. The next thing is I didn't spend enough time with the people that I really cared about. I didn't spend enough time with my family, with my connections. And another
Hmm.
thing is I didn't play. I didn't have fun. I didn't engage and enjoy life the way that I really wanted to. I was focused on things that weren't important. So yeah, these are very important things. And with the psychedelic experience, you might get a death and rebirth experience.
Mm.
And that might be very overwhelming for people, especially if you're at a place where you have a ton of regrets and you're not ready for it and you're not prepared to let go of these things. And it can also be really refreshing and rejuvenating because then you get to come back and say, these are the things that are really important to me. This is what I
Hmm.
really want to focus my energy on. This is what I really want to do is I want to connect with my kids or my family or my dog or my partners, or I want to connect with nature. I really want to have conversations with people rather than scrolling or doing the job where I type in all the things in the computer and I throw the rock over the fence and then walk to the other side and throw the rock right back over. We can choose what's important to us.
Right. And I can totally see in how psilocybin, for example, the way that it fires central neurons to different parts of the brain that they're not supposed to go to. I could see how trying to sit down with your emotions and trying to see what they feel like could be extremely helpful, whether it's with a microdose or a full dose. Because yeah, who knows what kind of insight, like emotions you could get, like how they feel. Because you could probably taste them, you could you could probably do things, you
Sure.
could probably hear them, you could probably, interpret them very differently in a new
That's
way.
right. That's right. When you have a very entrenched pattern of what you do with your emotions, and a lot of us are numb to our emotions. which is a response to trauma.
Mm.
Nobody's born into this world numb to their emotions. No 2-day-old baby is going to suppress their anger or their fear or their sadness when they want to be held or fed. They're going to cry
Right.
out and they're going to let you know. They're going to express their emotions. We all have the ability to be deeply connected and authentic with what we're experiencing and to express it in genuine ways. But we go through pain and we learn that having these emotions is bad. If I express my anger when I'm a kid, it might threaten my relationships with my parents. My parents might exile me or send me to my room until I can suppress my anger enough where I can come
Right.
back. So we disconnect from our emotions and we become numb to them. So that's the entrenched neural patterns that we have in terms of what we do with emotions. So just cultivating a practice where we turn our attention into our emotions and we start to reconnect with them is to create new neural patterns right away. We're already inducing that state.
Mm.
And then if you use a tool like you were just mentioning and you have that deep psychedelic experience, you can go so much deeper with it and you can create new patterns so much deeper and so much faster. It's an incredible tool to do that
Hmm.
if we can build that practice beforehand. Otherwise, what might end up happening, and I see this so frequently,
Hmm.
and it's happened to me a lot when I first started, is we don't know what to do with our emotions and we're overwhelmed by them. So when we work with a psychedelic and all those emotions come up to the surface, we don't know what to do. And we say, no, too much. Leave me alone. I don't want that. It's bad. We might even have a threat response to it. It might be existentially threatening to us.
Mm.
So it's very important to start to build that practice on your own
Right.
beforehand and then use the tool when you're ready.
Right. Yeah, and what about people who have already used the tool and weren't ready? I feel like there's a lot of those people who experience that. How do you have any advice for those kind of people who had like an amazing experience, but because they were on psychedelics, they completely disregard it. They're like, "Oh my God, I literally became nothingness and was reborn, and I became enlightened, I became God, blah blah blah, and I got filled with love, but I was on psychedelics, so it didn't actually happen."
Mm. Yeah, there's a couple ways that this goes, right?
Right? Yeah.
There's this one that you're talking about here, which is the spiritual bypass, in which case we can really get hooked on the psychedelic experience. And we can only have those things
Mm,
when we're working
right.
with psychedelics, which is very dangerous. The other way that it goes is we work with the psychedelic and all those emotions come up, and it can be really traumatizing to us. It can be really painful. It can really exacerbate a lot of that pain that we had. So, regardless of which way it goes, what we really want to do is we really want to build the relationship with the things that are coming up. If we say, okay, I worked with a psychedelic and I got lots of joy and love out of this, it felt incredible. Why can't we have that without the psychedelic?
Mm,
What's getting in your way? What is what is the reason why you don't have that in your life already? These are very
right.
important questions to ask, which comes back to building that relationship with what's going on inside of us. Again,
Mm,
psychedelics are very good at showing you things. They'll show you the state that's going on inside of you, and then they'll show you what things can be like. And then it's up to you to go and get there, to do the things that you need to do to get to that result. And this is another example. It showed you what love could be like. It shows you what peace and joy and
right.
gratitude could be like. Now, why don't you have that already?
Right. And not only does it show you that there's a reason why you don't have it, but I feel like it also kind of shows you that that experience and it was just bringing you into yourself. You were just coming, that experience that you fell in love with, you think it's the visuals, you think it's Pink Floyd, Miles Davis playing jazz or something, but what it really actually is yourself. You're really just coming into yourself and experiencing compassion and all of that stuff. And I think you can experience that with like meditation, you know,
Precisely.
and and other things. Do you have any tips for people trying to reach that state in a meditation? I know you kind of already went into that a little bit, but like it it's just the word psychedelic has so much emphasis on it. You know, it's such a strong effect. It's so hard to tell people that the experience that you feel when you look at another human being at the grocery store is actually the same exact thing. And it happens out of nowhere with no warning sometimes. You'll just experience that.
Hmm. Yeah, so what's the question?
I guess the question is like any like what should we like not what should we do, but like we have related psychedelic with an alien experience. When wouldn't you agree that it's a more natural experience rather? It's something that we experience every day.
Yeah, it's a deep connection to yourself.
Right. Yeah, but in our society, it's like it's it's something so external and
Sure. You know, Eric, all throughout human history, as far back as we can go, every time when we start to learn more about ancient civilizations or even recent civilizations, we find that every single culture had a place for psychedelic experiences. They were held in the highest respects, in the highest esteems. They were sacred experiences. And you can get there through so many different ways. You can, of course, you can work with a psychedelic substance and get there immediately. You can meditate, get there too. You can do a sun dance and push yourself to the brink of exhaustion and dehydration and have the experience there. You can go into caves and have the sensory deprivation and have
mm,
incredible psychedelic experiences. There's
right,
so many ways you can go into nature alone and spend 40 days and nights on the mountain and hear the voice of God. There's
right.
so many ways that we can get back to this deep connection to ourselves. And as you were just mentioning, when you look out in the world, whether it's to other people or to the world
Hmm.
around you, this is oftentimes a mirror of what's going on inside of you. So the psychedelic
Right.
experience is not out there. It's to turn your attention inward and to this is where we have real power in our lives. So we can all get there through
Hmm.
all day, every day, and that's the goal. When you look at people like Alan Watts or Ram Dass, any of these postmodern psychedelic psychonauts, if we'll call them that, people who started working with psychedelics, they all did the exact same thing. They started working with psychedelics, they had these incredible revelations, and then they started seeking out practices that would help them to have that experience all day, all throughout life. That was the goal. And so they would look into
Right.
Buddhism or various other practices that would allow us, whether it was yoga or meditation, to reconnect with ourselves.
Right.
And that's the goal, is to figure out how we can get there on our own and make it easier on ourselves.
Hmm. Right. Yeah, I gotcha. Oh man. Um, yeah. Do you do any when you do your sessions, do you how do you do anything about spirituality and kind of um um like how big of a role does spirituality play in your therapy sessions?
Hmm. Well, it depends on what you mean by spirituality.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of people have very different views of that. In fact, I'm willing to bet if we were to ask 10 people about spirituality, we
Yeah.
get 10 different answers. So I look at it as all the answers, all the wisdom, all the knowledge, the wholeness, the ability to heal, all the things that you're seeking, it's all inside of you already. And it's inside of every one of us. We're all born with it. We all have the ability to connect to it, but we become disconnected to it throughout our lives, usually that as an adaptation to pain or trauma.
Hmm.
When somebody is healing from an addiction, for instance, we say that they're in recovery. And the word recover means to find something that you've lost. So if I recover my keys after I've lost them, I found them. What are people in addiction who are healing from addictions recovering? Well, it's who they were before the pain that caused the addiction. They reconnect with themselves. And I can't think of a more spiritual thing than to reconnect with all of the wisdom that's inside of you that knows how to heal, that knows how to thrive, that has all of the wholeness of who we are as humans. And that is the goal right there of all the therapy that I do is to
Hmm.
help people to reconnect with the wisdom that's inside of them. I have lots of pointers and lots of maps that can help us get there, but all the answers come from the people that I'm working with. I
Hmm.
very rarely have anything to give them that's not already inside of them.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that. It reminds me of how in Buddhism the the Buddha wasn't he didn't have he wasn't looking at a map of consciousness or or a book by Carl Jung or something. He was sitting down meditating under the Bodhi tree. And so it's so funny how we try to get to that same place through all these other routes, except by actually doing the thing that gets it done.
Yeah, it's a bit of a distraction, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, we tend to like to over romanticize things a bit, right?
Mhm. Always looking outward for the answer, but
Hmm.
the real answers come from inside. You can find all the same psychological knowledge that the Buddha found by doing the exact same things that he did, which is to turn your attention inward.
Right.
And in fact, the philosophy is there's a Buddha inside of each and every one of us. So we can reconnect with that. We can find it and we can build the practice of trying to live out of that space every day.
And I do think that a simple recognition of the entire play is an exponential help. Just kind of like having that third person point of view almost sometimes.
Sure, sure.
Yeah. Well, Julian, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate all your time and wisdom that you gave us
Yeah.
today.
Thank you, Eric. I'm very happy to be here with you, and thanks for doing this show. I'm really happy that we get to put this type of information out there, and I'm really happy that there's people like you who are putting this out there. So thank you.
Me too, man. It was, I don't know how people, how this is all happening, but I'm extremely grateful to be able to have conversations with people like you, man. And hopefully one day we'll see if I can also join the psychedelic field in some
Hmm.
way.
No, you're already doing it. You have a
Hey,
podcast called.
dang
There you
it.
go.
You got me there. Julian, where can people find you if they want to reach out to you or have any questions or anything?
Yeah. Website's the best one, psychedelic-integration.net. I have a contact form. I post lots of articles and a therapy request form on there, and Instagram's great as well.
Awesome. And all that will be in the description of the podcast.
Thank you, Eric.
All right. Thank you, Julian. Hare Krishna.